Hi, this is Chris Terrell with Everyday VBA, and in this video we will be recording a macro. If you ever get stuck while you're learning VBA, one of the best ways to get unstuck is to record a macro. I used it just an absolute ton when I was beginning because as you're learning a new language, which is basically what VBA is, it's a new language to learn, there are a lot of pieces and parts that you forget or you get an error in your line of code and you can't figure out what's going on. And recording a macro is a great way to help get yourself unstuck. I'm going to show you a secret that I learned really too late. I wish I would have learned this years ago. And that's when you record a macro, you want to split your screen like I have here. And the reason you'll do that is because as you are clicking and you're adding rows or deleting columns, you'll actually be able to see what's being written, which is awesome. So we're going to go ahead and just dig right into this. First thing you want to do is go to your view in your ribbon. Got view right here. If you click on this, you've got record macro. Now you also have this down here, so you've got it on this section. It looks like that little spreadsheet with the record button. I'm going to go ahead and click that. I'm going to call this first macro. Now you'll notice I put a space. When I hit enter, it's going to yell at me. It's going to say, hey, that name that you entered is not valid. That basically means that you have a space in here. Now, sub-procedures as well as variables cannot have spaces. You can do underscores in them. We're going to give this a shortcut key. I'm going to hold my shift button down. I'm going to hit Q. So when I am done recording, all I have to do is hit Control-Shift-Q, and this macro will run. Now, I've got a couple of options of where I'm going to put this macro. I can put it in this workbook, which is what we're going to do. I can put it in a new workbook, or I can put it in a personal workbook. It's very important to understand that any macro that you do in VBA, in Excel, in Outlook, in Access, that macro is tied to, in Excel's case, it's tied to that workbook, which is very important, which means that if I record a macro on this workbook, I will not be able to go and open up another workbook and hit Control-Shift-Q and expect that to execute. So I'm going to click OK. Before I do that, I want to tell you what's going to happen. When I click OK, you've got my VBA project, which is the sheet that I have currently open. I've got two sheets. You'll notice that those sheet 1 and sheet 2. Sheet 3 is called country. I guess it's sheet 3. When I click OK, it's going to add another folder. That folder is going to be called modules. When I open up that module, it's going to be called module 1. The reason I know that is because it's the first module that will be created, and it will have within that module 1, when I open the code window, it will actually have my sub procedure. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to expand that. I'm going to double click on this and it's going to show you. Now you'll notice that it's got some commented fields out here, and that's basically using a single quote. You're able to comment out those pieces. So when the code is executed, it actually won't read these. And in VBA, if it's green, it means that it's not going to compile. All right, so you'll notice I just clicked on G9. You'll notice that it is already recording. So we are going to clean up this data set. We've got a country data set. There's stuff in here that I like. There's stuff in here I don't like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control Home. It's going to select A1. I am going to delete this column. I'm going to delete some columns because I don't like them. All I really want is I want the name of my country. I want the continental region, or the continent, the region, the surface area, the population. So I'm going to delete all this other stuff that I don't want. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to color these. And you'll notice as I'm just going through doing what I would normally do, it's actually writing code, which is great. We're going to center these. I don't like this name, so I'm going to actually call this country. Now you'll notice when I hit enter, it will actually tell you exactly what you're doing in that column. I don't like the fact that these are being truncated, so we're going to go and change those. So I'm going to highlight all those. I'm going to double click. Notice that it breaks everything out. Columns D and E, I don't like that format of that text, so we're going to go ahead and click Format. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go Number. I don't want two of those. You'll notice it puts in my number format. That's actually pretty awesome because if you're having issues, you want to format by a date, or you're having an issue knowing what that number format's going to look like, you can just record a macro, and then once you have that, you can put that into another macro that you're writing from scratch. So the next thing what I want to do is I want to come in here, I want to select this because I want to put a border around everything. The easiest way to do that is to go to your first column. I'm going to hold Shift and Control, and I'm going to hit the right arrow. And then I'm going to keep Control and Shift down, and I'm going to hit the down arrow, and that's going to highlight my entire section. Now when I've done that, I'm going to put on the borders. That's going to give a border, so it's going to make it look nice and clean. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a filter, and I'm going to sort this from surface area, largest to smallest. And at this point, I have what I'm looking for as far as from my recorded macro. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to click, come in here. I'm going to go File. I'm going to go Save As. I'm going to just put it on my desktop. And I need to save this as a macro-enabled workbook, otherwise the macro won't be saved. So I'm going to click Save. Call this country. And you'll notice that now that I have this saved, now what I can do is I'm going to open up a new sheet, and I'm going to actually paste that raw data in there, just like we were doing. So I'm going to go back to Open. I'm going to look at this. I know that this is my kind of cut off a little bit. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to copy this. Oh, you know what? I forgot to turn off my recording. So we're going to have to come in here and clean this up. This is actually pretty good. That way I can show you kind of how to clean this up. So I'm going to click Stop. It's going to stop my recording. I'm going to come back over here on sheet 6. I'm going to paste in my data set. Now I know that I ended right here. So this is me opening up a file, my workbook, and I am going to delete that section. Okay, so now we have our macro, we have our raw data set in here, and our recorded macro. So I'm going to go ahead and click to run this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm just going to make a copy of this because we're going to go and clean some of this up. If I if I click on the tab, it's going to pull up the sheet to move it. So if I wanted to move it, I could click that. I'm going to click my Control button. You'll notice it's got a plus in there. So that's just going to make a copy. The reason I did that is because when I run the code again, I already have a copy of that, so I don't have to open up the workbook again. I'm going to hit Control and Shift and Q, and that's going to run it. I can also run that from inside of here. If I'm inside of my code, I can click this button. That's one way to do it. I can hit Control Shift Q because remember we added a shortcut to the macro. I can also come in here and I can go into View Macros, and I can run or I can step into, which step into is line by line execution. Now if I click Edit, it opens up the Visual Basic. That was actually the wrong thing. I meant to click View Macros, Options. Now if you run a macro and you want to actually add a shortcut key after the fact, you go into the macros and you click Options, and you can change that right there. So with this, what we're going to do is I'm going to hit Control Shift and Q, and you'll notice looks like I get a debug error. This can happen. Now the reason this happened was because it is trying to access the sheet called country, and that does not exist. So because we put it on sheet 1, oh, I know exactly what happened. So you'll notice that I hit select on country right here and at the beginning. Now this can happen when you record a macro. This is why you kind of need to practice these things. The way that you would figure this out is you would click here, and you'll notice that when I run this, it's going to select this. Now I don't want it to select that, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this column. Sorry, I deleted the wrong one. I'm not going to delete it. I'm just going to comment it out so that it's there. I'm going to come back to here. Now you'll notice I can click around. And when I click around, since these aren't tied down to a specific sheet, it's going to execute that code wherever I'm at. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-Shift-Q. I get that error again, and I'm getting that error because it's looking for sheet country, and I'm actually not on sheet country. That's what the problem is. The way around that is we would have to basically always put that on sheet 1, or always a copy and paste. So for example, the way to basically code this out correctly, and it's good to actually go through this, because you see that, you know, I've coded for a really long time, and even I can have issues with these recordings. But so in order for this to fully work, we would have to copy and paste our data set into the original sheet that we had run the macro on. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this in here. I'm going to go ahead and paste all of it. Now, when I run this on this single page, it works just fine. So I know that if I copy and paste, which is one of the challenges with recording the macros, you can bang your head against the wall for a little bit, but it is because it's very literal, just like most code. So I hope this is really helpful. I hope that you get a lot of practice doing recording macros. They are incredibly powerful. They can also be a little frustrating, but fight through it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day.